Good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever. Hello everyone, I'm Kate Sculpts, and today I've decided to do something a little bit different, trying out tips and techniques from my comment section and putting them together to make a little something. So with that said, let's go on to the first technique. The first comment I followed along with was from Sablehaven Art, which pretty much detailed on how to make a few tools to use for things like wood, leaves, and moss textures. So one of them is like 3 needles put together, another one is about 10, and the 3 needles is going to be used for a wood texture and the 10 needles are going to be used for a moss texture. And then I took the end of a paintbrush and pinched it, and that one will be later used to make sort of a leafy texture on branches. This comment was left on my wild robot sculpture, obviously, because that was the one where I did leaves and tree branches, so of course that technique will help a little bit more, not to hurt my hands. And the next technique was my own technique. I know I completely go off the rails. I said I'd be using comments, but this one I did actually want to try out and experiment myself, so I thought it would be best to place it in this video. What I tried to do here was make a sort of holographic texture. I can't say either of the 3 tries came out too well, but I think it's still something to be kind of proud of, since I tried to experiment. I didn't really use anything online. I usually just go at things without much knowledge. I think, you know, in the future, if you're actually going to use a holographic thing, go with an actual paint, but they can be expensive, which is why I was trying to do this. The next comment was from Sarah and pretty much asked why I didn't assemble after painting. I think we kind of went back and forth a little bit about it, and I was concerned about if the paint would burn in the oven or chip off or even peel off if left untextured underneath. So I experimented with 4 different pieces, one textured and painted on all sides, one textured and painted on one side, one painted on one side, and one painted on all sides. And I put them in the oven with the paint on and they all came out fine. None of them chipped, none of them peeled, none of them cracked or burnt, and I'm quite happy with how this came out, really, and hopefully I can use this in the future to make things just a little bit easier instead of painting around tiny little details I can't really reach. The next comments, plural, are 2 that I used at the same time as it fit well. One was a cork block to hold things up, which worked perfectly well. I had considered using it in the past, but I didn't know, things about it. I didn't really know how it would work, but I tried it and it worked. So thank you, East Coast Creator, for that. By the way, shout out to him. Go check out his videos. Bloody hell, he makes amazing sculptures. And the other one is from 619 Slip K. Again, another shout out. Thank you for commenting on a lot of my videos. Really appreciate that. And that comment was detailing on object source lighting, and it kind of didn't go very well. Pretty much just adding lighting details to an area to make it look like it's, has light on it. It's a good technique, it really is. I didn't use it very well, and we're going to try it again in the future, but I'll talk more about that later. Now on to the making of something, using the majority of those techniques, not all of them. And pretty much what I did was I took an old candle holder, this sort of jar that I'm going to use to hold things in the future, and I'm just decorating it with a tree and some moss and some wood textures and mushrooms and even a bit of that holographic texture that I did, using, like I said, most of the techniques except for object source lighting, because I think it would be best for me to experiment with that a bit more before trying it on an actual piece, because clearly I wasn't good at it. But what I'm doing right now is making the branches for the tree, curling up little pieces of wire into this sort of squiggly pattern and coating them with clay, and then of course blending it out creates this sort of branchy look. It works better on a smaller scale. I did use it on the wild robot sculpture yet again, and using it on a bigger scale just kind of, you lose definition with kind of branches and leaves, so using them smaller like this makes it kind of look more like leaves but also branches, and it just looks a little bit better. I also developed the actual branch itself by adding little balls of clay and blending them out to make it look a little bit layered like leaves. I think that just adds another layer of depth to the branch. And then from, I think, Sarah, I think it was, no, who I meant to say was Sablehaven Art. This technique was the little paintbrush that's been smushed at the end to make the leafy sort of texture. I think it came out super well. Oh my gosh, I can't speak. It made these little leaves and just made them look really well. It was kind of, like she said, that sort of snippy technique from the scissors, but without it, completely damaging my hands. I created lots and lots of these leaves. I think it was like, what, 5, 10, 15, 20... No, wait, no. Oh, I don't know. It was a lot. It was a good few. It took a few hours to make, and they came out really cute. And then after I've made them all, I kind of assembled them after baking, of course, because I didn't want to smush them because they smush really easily, because this is a very dainty little texture and my hands are too giant for them. Using a bit of clay, I kind of used the metal wire ends of them to smush them in to get them all layered up so that they all stuck together nicely and I didn't have to worry about them falling apart, except they did fall apart a little off camera, so I had to rebake them with a bit of clay glue in there, but that's completely fine, doesn't matter. And then, of course, after assembling them, I baked them again using the cork block this time, and it worked very well. Then I kind of used my paintbrush and added some clay glue along the jar. This is when I'm going to start detailing the jar. I meant to actually add the lid on before adding that, and the clay glue will definitely help stick it, as when it comes to things like glass, it's very smooth, and even despite my efforts of sanding it down to make it a little rougher, it's still going to be just a little bit too smooth to hold on to. So using the clay glue will help after baking so that it stays on and doesn't snap off. I textured them and kind of flattened them down into the surface, making them all squiggly, some longer, some shorter. I really like the kind of difference in, sizes and squiggliness. Some of them are really squiggly and some of them are a little less, but yeah, quite enjoyed making this. It was quite therapeutic, especially with the clay glue helping me stick them down to the glass. Of course, you might notice that I might want to open the lid. Don't worry, after I've completely finished texturing everything, I will slice it open kind of at that seam so that the lid can come off. But the one downside is that every time I put the lid back on, I'm gonna have to match up the little roots along the base, which is gonna be definitely a little annoying. Then at the bottom here, I just made the moss. Of course, I wanted to use that nice little tool to make the moss texture, and this is the perfect time to use it, as well as the top of the jar as well, but that's later on. So I had it all along, and then using this one, the 3-pronged needle tool, I created the wood texture, kind of running it along. It looks a little bland right now. Of course, that's because I haven't added the moss along the wood as well. I mean, no matter what texture you use, you can't really make wood that interesting without moss, am I right? Wow, I sound nasally today. Anyways, I just kept texturing that until I was finished, and then I added these little balls of clay. This is going to be used for the moss. Again, like I said, adding little moss on things like wood just helps bring it to life a little bit more. And I did this for the top. Right now it looks like stones, but then I just blend them out with this silicone tool to make them all nice and together, and then all of that definition is lost as soon as I start texturing it with the 10-pronged needle tool. I will admit the tool did fall apart. I think that was my fault. It did fall apart because I didn't adhere it well enough. It's a great tool. Of course, if you've watched my other videos, you know that I love my moss technique, the one where I use that kind of ball tool and make little holes and ball shapes. I do admit this texture looks a lot more like moss actually does, but I think for now I'll stick with my moss technique in the future, just simply because it's more stylized, and I prefer that when it comes to my sculptures. I like them to be me. I made that texture. I like to use it, but I will definitely use the texture for other things maybe. It's it's an amazing texture. Even like, say if I made a baby bird, it would kind of resemble the sort of fluff that you find on them. I think that would be quite cute to do. Oh, I'll keep that in my mind, won't I? Anyways, I'll make the mushrooms. You've seen it all before. You know, little baby mushrooms with some clay. Some of them are dotted, which will be the red mushrooms. Some of them are not, which will be the brown mushrooms. The brown mushrooms are usually typically smaller when I make them, and the red ones are a little bit bigger, just because I like the contrast of the red, so I make more of them. Then I paint the leaves, of course, using the cork block still. It really did help to keep it up so that I could paint underneath without getting paint all over my hands. I did get paint on my hands, but it didn't really matter. Then I painted the base of the kind of glass section of the jar a black so that I could start working on the holographic technique once it's dried. Then I just dry brushed on top of the branches. Like I said, I didn't really use object source lighting in the actual final piece just because I'm not good at it. I didn't actually I probably should use a tutorial when trying to learn how to do it, but I'm stubborn and I like to figure things out myself, so I'm gonna keep experimenting with it and seeing what I can do, but I'll do that off camera and later on, so unfortunately that won't really be a part of this piece. Then I go in and do the kind of a holographic detail that I did. This one was kind of a blend of the very watered down paint blending quite messily kind of one, and I did leave some black areas to, you know, when metal shines, it does sometimes appear black, so I like to leave it on there. Then I painted the wood, of course, typical, just brown. I mean, you've seen it all before. It's quite simple. Yeah, I went all over. I probably should have kept the lid on while painting this bit, just so that I could make it consistent with the top and the bottom. There were parts where it wasn't completely consistent. I had to go back and redo it in certain areas because it just didn't look quite right and didn't match up nicely. Of course, all the roots are showing between the moss, but the moss will be covering most of those branches while once I've painted it. Then paint the bottom, and this is really where you can see that moss texture just really works. It works so well. It looks so like mushy. I think that's a good way to describe it. I love how it looks. God, I don't want to cheat on my my technique, but it's tempting. It's very tempting. Gosh. Who likes green? Who likes the colour green? Because I love the colour green, you know? Sorry, I know I'm going a bit off here, but just... I love green, and especially when you add red mushrooms, the contrast is great. Then I just dry brush like usual, adding a little bit of paint on my brush to texture on top of the moss to make it look a little bit more defined and less flat. I do use a yellow when texturing moss because it brings out sort of a highlighty kind of look to it. Then I just paint the mushrooms, of course, the brown mushrooms, the little ones without the polka dots. Polka dots. They are the brown mushrooms, and then the red mushrooms, like I said, contrast so well. When adding a mix of brown and red and oh my gosh, I'm losing the ability to speak. When using a mix of brown and red mushrooms, it creates an amazing contrast with the brown of the wood and the green of the moss. It just looks so great. I love it. It just adds that little pop of colour that makes it a little bit more interesting to look at. And of course, like I've said a million times before, you can never have enough little white dots on your mushrooms. So although I added the clay dots, I then go in and add even tinier little paint dots all around, kind of between those bigger dots. And then I attach the kind of branchy leafy top texture of the tree to the branch, or the stump, I mean, not the branch. Didn't add any branches. So just kind of screw it on top of there. And then I go in and gloss the, you know, the glass part of the jar just to make it a little bit more shiny, make it look a little bit more holographic. And then onto the conclusion. I deem the little painted squares a success. And the holographic circle, kind of testing out the different techniques that I could use for holographic. I'd probably choose the bottom one as the best. I'd say I'd got to work on this one. It's not perfect, but I can definitely do better. Then the next one, the cork block. This one was a bit strange because I had thought of this one in the past, but I never actually went ahead with it until now, of course, getting the succession suggestion, and this was a success. And the next one is the object source lighting. This one, no, it didn't go very well. This is a fail. Well, for now at least. Then the next one, these little tools, of course one of them broke. I'll come back to it. These two, amazing. A success. Actually, a great success. And then, of course, the jar at the end. This one is a success, I'd say. Now, of course, it's the end of the video. Might as well start it here. I want to say thank you to all of you who have left comments, not just the people mentioned in this video. There are other comments that have made suggestions and just positive comments in general. I'm very appreciative of every single one of those. I couldn't make them all into this video, but thank you. And again, like I said, go check out East Coast Creator. They make some awesome videos. I can't wait to be back. I know I've been a little bit flaky at the moment, not been many videos, lots has been going on, but I do promise things in the future. I cannot wait to be back. And if you enjoyed this video, of course, you can leave a like and subscribe, only if you want to. No pressure there whatsoever, of course, like always, and hopefully, I will see you guys next time. We're almost at 1,000. Love you guys. Bye-bye.